How to close a sales presentation. This is very similar to how to close a sales deal. The most important part is how to open it. It is never how to close it. People think it is. What people need, what people think they need in business are often very different. And how you open a deal is key, and how you open a sales presentation is key. So I'll make sure a link is in the comments below where you can actually look at the first video on how to open a sales presentation. If you can't get that right, nothing else matters. So let's just say you've gone through the presentation. You've done your research, you have asked the right questions, you have listened carefully, and you have shared the benefits of your business in relation to what your prospect or client needs. That is absolutely key. And then you mention the price. And this is like the second half of the sales presentation. You mention price and what happens next. Well, there's a number of variables. The ideal variable is they go, fantastic, let's go ahead. It doesn't happen as often as it should. When it does, it's one of the best feelings in the world. And then you then tell the person, okay, fantastic, here's how we're going to work together. Here's how I'm going to make this work for you. And you set a time and date where everything starts. And before everything starts, when you win a deal, make sure you send the individual something. And if they're based abroad, send them some articles to read, send them some PDFs they can find valuable. If they're based more locally, so when I work with people in the UK and Ireland, I will nearly always send them a thank you card and a book in the post to arrive the next day. People don't expect bonuses. I find a lot of businesses right now, unfortunately, do the bare minimum to get by. Sadly, some even do less than the bare minimum. So anytime you over-deliver by giving extra value, extra articles, extra case studies, things that will help your prospect or your potential customer, that makes a huge difference to them. And it's a nice surprise. And let's be real, getting things in the post is kind of cool. Because all we ever get in the post are bills or bad flyers or takeaways. It's not really value that we get in the post from people. So that's a good thing to do if you win the deal. Let them know what a better business is going to look like now you're working together. Now that's the perfect situation. Let's go ahead and work. And don't forget also when you're working with somebody, a lot of people when they sign the contract go, phew, that's a relief, and move on to the next client. That's the worst thing you can do. I see this happen all the time. What you need to do is make sure you're giving value to that client. And don't just call the client after 6 months to say, how are you getting on? And don't call them after 11 months and go, by the way, the contract's up for renewal. What do you want to do? Do you want to continue? It should be so effortless because you've given so much value to them throughout the year. Then when it comes time to rebooking or even upselling through the year, it should be a natural conversation you can have. So that's the first ideal situation. You win the deal. The other option is they go, too expensive. And that does happen. It's more relevant in certain industries. When I work with law firms, it doesn't really come up. Lawyers care about value and they pay for it. Other companies I might work for, certain accountants, certain small businesses, solopreneurs, will often go too expensive. Or can you give a discount? So if somebody says you're too expensive, here's what you do. You slow things down, because when people are often dealt with, you're too expensive. Or can you give a discount? The first thing that often happens is people say, well, that's because we're a big company, or that's because we've got a great history, or that's because we offer the best customer service, or that's because we're the best of the best. And what they do is they talk themselves out of a deal. And that's the worst thing you can do. So slow things down completely. Sometimes you've got to take a step backwards before you take 2 steps forward. And then simply ask, expensive compared to whom? Now, why is expensive compared to whom important? Well, it's because they might be comparing you to somebody who's advertising on YouTube or Instagram, which is a different audience, say, to LinkedIn. It could be they're comparing you to some big American guru with millions of followers who can charge the price of 2 lattes a month because he has millions of followers. Or it could be you're offering a completely different deal to what somebody else is offering. That's why it's very important to ask, compared to whom? Listen to what is said. Don't be afraid of asking 1 or 2 more questions. Now, if they say, what kind of discount can you give? Which is another good rejection people will give when you're trying to close a deal. How much discount can you give me? The way you answer that is very simple. You go over the kind of concerns they have, you talk about solutions, and you ask, is there anything I might have missed? This is very important. It shows you're a human being, and it shows humility. Is there anything I might have missed? And you listen to what they say. And then, of course, you give your answer according to that. And what you do is sometimes you will take stuff away. They say, look, I cannot get any more money for this. This is all the money I have. You have a few options. You can then say, okay, I can't do it for that. What I can do is take this bit away and take this bit away and reduce the price for you. And sometimes the potential client or the prospect will accept that. And sometimes they'll go, no, just keep things as they are. Sometimes you give an exchange of value. So if sometimes I'm just at a stalemate and there's no movement and they're insisting on a discount, I'll sometimes say, okay, let's have an exchange of value. So I need you to buy 10 copies of my first book or my second book or my third book, or I want you to give me a LinkedIn testimonial, if you're happy with the service, of course, and I want you to give me a shout out on social media if you think my service is good enough at the very end. For me, that's okay. That's a worthwhile thing to do. If the discount is too big, it's very important to know when to walk away. Not everybody is your client. And certainly when you're starting out in your career or times are tough financially, there is a danger of taking on business that you really shouldn't take on. And we've all made those mistakes. I certainly have, sadly, and almost regretted it immediately afterwards, because you're working with somebody you don't want to work with. That's never a nice experience for anybody. No matter where you are, no matter who you're working with, it's never a great experience. So be prepared to walk away from a client. Now, the other option can be, we need time to think about it. In which case, fine. Sometimes people need time to think about things, especially if a lot of budget is involved. And if they say that, how you answer is this: that is absolutely fine, I understand. From my experience of working with companies like yours, there's often 1 to 3 people involved in the decision-making process. That, of course, is if it's a small business. A medium-sized business, from my experience, there's often 3 to 6 people involved in the decision-making process. If it's a corporate, there's often 6 to 12 people involved in the decision-making process. And by saying this, you sound professional, you sound like you've done this before, and you understand how business works. I'm always surprised how few people in business, when they're selling to other people, don't sometimes understand how businesses operate and work. And you need to show you understand the person you're trying to do business with. You then also follow that up with this question here. Who else is involved in the decision-making process? And that's important. If you say, are you a decision maker? People often go, of course I am, because they don't want you bothering the CEO or the commercial director or the COO or whoever it is that makes the final decision. Because in a decision-making process, there's one final decision maker, but there's several people involved who influence that, and they can derail that deal at any time. So you always want to ask, who else is involved in the decision-making process? And how can we best reach them? Not how can I best reach them, because the person doesn't want you going over their head. How can we best reach them? And you talk about how you can best reach the other person. That's important. So your various options are price compared to whom. The options are, the person might say, what discount can you offer? The other options are, be prepared to walk away from a client if they demand too much or you think they're going to be toxic or difficult to work with. You never want clients like that. Make sure that if someone wants time to think, you find out who else is involved in the decision-making process. Is there anything else you could have done? And always ensure you have a meeting booked up before you leave the current meeting you're in. Don't be chasing people afterwards on email. Get them to open their diary and get a timing booked in. And of course, the ideal solution is we'll continue right now, which is fantastic. Celebrate it and make sure you tell the person the fantastic experience they're going to have working with you going forward. If this has been useful, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Every single week I'm uploading new videos on sales, on mindset, on LinkedIn to help you do business and generate more sales in the future.